Hey Crossroads, it's Pastor Falyn here with a sermon recap for this week. This past Sunday, we continued the Endure series that Pastor Jeremy's been doing through the book of Acts. And we talked about Acts chapter 21, and we went through verses 1 through 36. And we joined Paul on his journey to Jerusalem, and we talked about his call to obedience and how he saw his call to obedience to God more important than anything else that could possibly be. And even though his friends in the Spirit were warning him not to go to Jerusalem, he was ready to die for his faith. And so he focused on that and continued on his direction and what God had called him to do. And then he moved on and went to a couple different locations like Tyre and Ptolemais, and where he met up with some friends of his. And we talked about the power of community and how it's important to have friends that are there for you and know when to give you advice and when to cease at giving you advice and when to stop encouraging you not to or to do something because you're going to do what God has called you to do. And we talked about examples like marrying someone in a short period of time, or making the unpopular opinion for your faith, and going for what God has called you to do versus what other people may think you're crazy for. And then we talked about having courage in adversity and how courage inspires us to trust God even when we're facing adversity, and how Paul, upon arriving in Jerusalem, he met with James and the elders, and despite the potential backlash, Paul remained steadfast in his courage, and Paul had confidence in his calling. And even though he had moments of fear and uncertainty, he continued forward. And then we talked about some of the things that we may be facing today when we had fear or uncertainty, things like the elections and where our country's at, and the health of a child, where maybe you're facing something that you have to make a decision for your child and you're not sure what it is, but you feel like you know, but it's the unpopular opinion. We talked about how we develop courage like Paul's, and how when we pray, we grow closer to God, and it helps us to develop courage. We talked about reading the Word, and how when we read the Word at least 14 minutes a day, based on a study that I had read about, that it helps our health. It reduces our stress and helps us have a better, improved mental well-being and a stronger sense of purpose. And that we just need to trust God in these trials and in these situations. And then lastly, we talked about the cost of discipleship and how Paul was arrested towards the end of the chapter there, and the different things that were going on. And he was arrested for proclaiming the gospel. The moment emphasizes the reality of suffering for faith, and Paul's calm and respectful demeanor in the face of hostility was absolutely remarkable. He remains focused on sharing the gospel even when treated unjustly. So while we may never be arrested for sharing the gospel, we do have to make sacrifices a lot of times. And what are some of the things that we might have to sacrifice? There's things like giving up a job where you make great money. That's something that could have to be sacrificed. Choosing friends that are good for you, and giving up those that may have been longtime friends, but they're not good in building your faith. They're helping you walk at this Christian journey. Getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that God is calling you to do, like sharing your faith with somebody, or stepping out to a different job, or stepping out to do something new that God is calling you to do, whether it's on a serve team or in a connect group. And then we also talked about what other things could you have to sacrifice in order to be a light in this world? And are you willing to sacrifice the plans that you have for your life to follow the plan that God has for your life? And what is most important in that? And so are you willing to do that? Are you willing to take that step of faith, that step of obedience, and follow what God has for you? So let's be obedient and faithful to our calling, supporting each other in community, facing challenges with courage, and being willing to sacrifice in order to live the life that God has for us. Together we can reflect Jesus' love and strength to the world around us. So this week I just challenge you to do that. I challenge you to talk to God, to spend more time with God and figure out what He is calling you to do. And when trials come up and uncertainty and fear try to step in, I encourage you to lean more on Him and to follow His call that He has, not what everybody else is telling you to, but to listen to God's voice above any other voice. So have a great week, and we will see you Sunday.
Okay, they're not there.
Oh, jeez. Oh.